Hello, I'm Ray McMurray with the Corpus Christi American Federation of Teachers, and we're very honored to have a special guest in Corpus Christi, Brian Jones, who helped direct and produce the movie The Inconvenient Truth Behind Waiting for Superman. And this has been really the premier defense of public education in a world where we are seeing an attack on our schools, our public education system, and really an overall corporatization of our schools. So we're honored to have you, Brian. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. It is great to have you in Corpus Christi. Tell me a little bit about what's going on in the United States with kind of the corporatization of our schools. What's really happening with the funding, and what's the political agenda behind some of what we're seeing with the corporatization of public education?
Well, what I see happening is a transformation of public education from something that is organized around the concept of the public good and public funds to something that, as you said, is being privatized, being funneled into the private sector, and really reorganized around free business principles and ideas. So instead of guaranteed tax-supported public education, increasingly you have budget cuts that limit the budgetary base for public education, and then that's supplemented with philanthropy. And so the philanthropists come in and they're perceived or touted as heroes and saviors of the public schools, but really with their money comes a great deal of control. And so philanthropy becomes a kind of way to bypass democratic accountability, and many of these philanthropists effectively set education policy with money.
Like the Gates Foundation.
The Gates Foundation, the Broad Foundation, Mark Zuckerberg gives money to New Jersey, and with that money comes, you have to do this with charter schools, you have to do this with teacher evaluation. So it's very leveraged.
And within that movement, we see this idea that somehow saving impoverished students in low-income neighborhoods, this is the new civil rights movement, that these philanthropists are going to come in and lift these students up.
Right.
How is that kind of a facade? I mean, how is that really not dealing with the issue, and how are we really not serving low socioeconomically disadvantaged students in that process?
Well, I mean, it's a very convenient narrative, frankly, for the recession to say that the billionaires are the saviors. They're the ones who are altruistic. They're the ones who, just are thinking of the students. That's all they care about.
Yeah.
And especially the poorest students, and especially students of color.
Yeah.
Right. They've always been the saviors.
Yeah, that's why they've already gone in and fixed their streets, and fixed their parks and their neighborhoods,
fixed their health care. Right. Yeah. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
But the flip side of it is that at the same time, the other side of the coin of that narrative is that the people who you really can't trust, the people who are selfish and self-interested and greedy, are the teachers.
Right.
So it's almost like we need more billionaire teachers.
Yeah. So they've turned the whole paradigm upside down in terms of what we've thought of traditionally as the teachers as public servants,
right?
Sacrificing so much, really to lift students up. Now all of a sudden they're the evil ones,
right?
And the billionaires and the corporations are going to rush in and save them.
Are the heroes. Yeah. But you also touch upon the question of racial justice, and I think what we have to say is that yes, there are communities that have been underserved and devastated and for decades. And including in some places in their schools.
Right.
And we have to join with those communities to fight for the schools that they deserve and the kind of services that they deserve. But the idea that ripping up public schools and replacing it with a free market model is going to create racial justice is just absurd. Because you look at the places where they've already accomplished this, and instead of racial justice, you get recreations of racial hierarchy, like New Orleans, where they now have basically effectively destroyed the public school system. Instead, they have a portfolio model where the superintendent literally says his job is just to close schools down and bring online new operators. And by selecting and deselecting operators of schools, we're going to eventually get all great schools, except what they really have is a competitive system where the poorer and darker you are, the more expensive you are to educate, the more services you need, the needier you are, the more you're stuck at the bottom.
Disenfranchised,
Yeah.
marginalized.
Yeah.
No doubt. Well, let me ask you this. Moving forward, we have race to the top under the Obama administration. What does that look like? What do you think, what changes could potentially come in the second term with Obama and race to the top?
Well, I really have no idea. I wish that Obama would turn away from race to the top. But unfortunately, I don't see any sign of that. I think that we in the AFT and NEA, and anywhere where teachers and educators and parents and students are organized, have to call upon Obama to reverse course and have to challenge, frankly, Obama. Even though I know that a lot of teachers are loyal supporters of Obama, I think that we have to speak up as educators and challenge those policies.
Right.
Because I think they're just not in the best interests of teaching and learning. Because many of the changes that are coming because of Race to the Top is even more teaching to the test, for example, because it demands that we tie teacher evaluations to test scores. Even I was disappointed in the State of the Union address. Calling for more early childhood intervention is great, except that along with that is the specification that all of these kind of measurable outcomes be part of the package.
And maybe even push testing into the kindergarten level.
Right, exactly.
It's just another avenue for
right.
the expansion of
right.
high stakes testing.
Yeah.
But let me ask you one last question. When we look at poverty, drug addiction, homelessness, is it easier for these philanthropists and the corporate agenda to come in and blame the schools as opposed to investing in the real wraparound services that we lack and the social elements and negatives that around homelessness, drug addiction, poverty? Isn't it easier to blame the schools than deal with those things?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, look at who's behind this whole privatization campaign. People like the Walton family, who are the owners of Walmart. So we're supposed to believe that they are just trying to figure out how to set children up in the best possible way, yet look at how they treat adults who work for them. They have adults working for them full-time, nearly full-time hours, who are in poverty. And yet they are going to turn around and try to portray public schools as trapping kids in poverty. It's so hypocritical. So we have to have a more holistic view. I think we have to have the view that the interests of children and the interests of adults, rather than being pitted against each other, are actually tied together and bound up with each other. Like, if we want to do things that are going to be good for children, we have to do good things that are good for parents.
Right.
We have to make it easier to be a parent, not harder to be a parent. We have to make it easier to be a child, not harder to be a child. And frankly, I think we have to make it, instead of making it hot for teachers, or holding a sword over their head, that's going to get better teaching out of them. It's just really the wrong way to look at it. And I think, frankly, we have to understand that underneath all of that is a kind of anti-union idea, that really it's about breaking up the power of unions, and teachers' unions is one of the largest unions still standing in America.
Right.
Is obviously a prime target.
Yeah, I mean, the unions are, in a sense, the last defense to the corporate takeover of our schools and moving to charters and vouchers and turning this whole thing into a business entrepreneurial opportunity.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
It's
great to have you in Corpus Christi. Thank you. I mean,
I'm excited.
When we watched your documentary 2-3 years ago, never would have imagined that I would be getting a chance to visit with you here in our hometown of Corpus. So
I do want to just, one correction is that I'm only the co-narrator of the film. I did not, technically speaking, I'm not a director or producer.
Who did produce? Who wrote the film?
It's a group of people. Their names are Darren Morelli, Lisa Donlin, Molly Brune, Julie Kavanaugh.
Are they
Norm
teachers
Scott.
in New York?
All educators.
See,
and
that's
Lisa
what
Donlin is a parent.
Okay.
So it's all educators and a parent.
Yeah,
And
and that's
working in the schools. And this was all a part-time, after-school, weekends kind of project. So I only played a small role in it, and so I just want to make sure that they get credit for the work.
Certainly, we don't, and I value and respect that you want to bring some balance to that.
Yeah.
But you know, you were in the film, and you
Yeah. Oh no, I'm
were the
happy.
narrator,
I'm
and
happy to.
So a lot of
I'm happy
times
to
when we
represent.
think,
Yeah.
when we see the documentary,
Yeah.
and certainly you had a lot of your own.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, your own feelings and emotions came out
Sure.
in that documentary,
Yes,
and
yes.
we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you
thanks
very
a bunch.
much.
Yeah,
Great
you
to
bet.
meet you.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you.